There's a very specific kind of man who walks into adulthood carrying a weight that he just doesn't understand. And in my work with men all over the world, I've noticed the same pattern repeat itself over and over again. This type of man's not weak. He's he's not broken or defective. He simply grew up in an environment that forced him into survival mode before he ever had a chance to develop a foundation for emotional stability. And when a man grows up like that, it shapes his entire identity. He often comes from a home where his mother was trapped in unstable relationships, where domestic violence was normal, where fear lived in the walls. And he learned without anyone ever saying the words that he wasn't a priority. He saw his mother choose men who hurt her more than she chose the safety of her own children. And a boy absorbs that. A boy builds beliefs out of that. He forms an internal narrative that says, if I truly matter to someone, someone would protect me. And if love was real, it wouldn't look like this. And then for many men, there's another layer, the violation of trust by another adult who should have been safe. Abuse from a relative, a neighbor, something that hijacks the child's innocence and leaves him questioning his worth. And he grows up with disgust and shame that never belonged to him. He grows up believing his body is something that other people get to control. And because no adult ever stepped in to stop it, he interprets that silence as permission. And then, of course, the father wound, a dad who was absent, neglectful, or unpredictable, just simply emotionally unavailable. A boy in that environment will always interpret that absence as a reflection of his own value. He will believe, if my own father doesn't choose me, who will? He walks into adulthood carrying the ache of never hearing the words that he really needed. That you belong, son. You matter to me, boy. You're my whole world. You're not a mistake. And now here's the part that most people don't understand. The adult man may not consciously remember all of these details, but his nervous system sure does. His nervous system remembers everything. Childhood chaos becomes adult hypervigilance. Childhood abandonment becomes adult insecurity. Childhood unpredictability becomes adult emotional dysregulation. The past isn't past when it's stored in the body. So this type of guy reacts fast. He gets triggered easily. He cries unexpectedly. He shuts down or explodes, and he thinks it means something is wrong with him. When in reality, everything that he's experiencing is a normal response to an abnormal childhood. Now, as someone who has spent years helping men work through this, here's what I can tell you with absolute confidence. This man can heal, but not by ignoring the past, not by toughing it out, not by shaming himself. Healing requires structure, intention, and practice. And there are concrete steps that he can take to ease his pain right now. One of the most powerful tools is nervous system regulation. A man like this has lived in a constant state of internal alarm. So the first thing he needs is a way to signal his body that he's safe. A simple practice. One hand on the chest, right on your heart. Maybe another one on the stomach. One slow inhale through the nose and one slow exhale through the mouth. Repeated over and over and over again. I've watched men's lives change from this alone. Just putting your hand up on your heart is huge. Another tool is emotional labeling. When he can identify what he feels, anger, sadness, fear, loneliness, instead of reacting automatically, he activates the calm part of his brain. He shifts from survival into awareness, and awareness is where emotional control begins. Now, a third step is self-soothing. Most men were never taught how to do this. They were told to man up, don't cry, just deal with it. But a man who grew up in chaos doesn't need more toughness. He needs gentleness. He needs to speak to himself the way an ideal father would. It's okay to feel this. I'm safe. I'm not in danger right now. This is how he rewires the internal world that was built in crisis. Next, another step is movement, and not punishment driven movement, not crush yourself in the gym movement, just grounded movement. Trauma stores itself physically in the body, so something as simple as going for a walk outside, a quiet stretching routine, or slow lifting can release emotional tension that he didn't realize he was holding. And then there's community. Another essential piece here, guys. Men who grow up like this often assume they're alone because they carried their pain alone. But when they sit with other men who share their wounds, men doing the same work, learning the same skills, speaking the same emotional language, something shifts in them. Their shame dissolves, their isolation breaks. This is exactly why I built an online community, why so many men inside of it have transformed their lives. And the work is powerful, but it's even more powerful when you're doing it with other people. And then there's grief, one of the most underestimated steps in healing. A man who grew up in chaos has to grieve the childhood that he didn't get, not for the sake of wallowing, but for the sake of emptying the heaviness that he's carried. When a man allows himself to grieve the absence of safety, the lack of guidance, the missing affection, his body finally releases the emotional pressure that has controlled him for years. And finally, guys, another step, identity work. This type of man must consciously rebuild his beliefs. When he feels unlovable, remind himself, my upbringing taught me this. It doesn't define me. And when he feels abandoned, he can tell himself, I choose myself now. When he feels overwhelmed, he can say, this reaction is familiar, but it's not who I am. These statements are they're more than just affirmations, guys. These are neurological rewiring, but you have to say it in a way that where you actually feel it. And everything that I'm describing here is proven, guys. These are practical, repeatable, science-backed steps. And every step a man takes towards this type of work is a step away from the patterns that used to control him. Now, I've watched men that I've coached going through these sessions thinking that they were beyond repair, and then walk out grounded, strong, and emotionally intelligent in ways that they never imagined. A man who grew up with pain like this is not doomed. In fact, once he begins doing this work, he often becomes one of the most powerful, steady, emotionally aware men that you will ever meet because he has depth, he has self-awareness, he has resilience. He has lived through the kind of adversity that would shatter most people, and now he's learning how to use it as a foundation instead of a prison. And for the man who's ready to really dive into this type of work, to break generational patterns, to learn self-control, the type of work that we're doing inside of our community and in my one-on-one coaching, you guys, this is not surface level advice here. This is real transformation, structured, guided, proven steps. Work, the kind of work that gives a man back his life. Because men who grew up with these wounds, they can absolutely heal. They can build safe homes, safe relationships, safe identities. They can become the kind of man that they never had growing up. And the moment they take the first step, the moment that they commit to this process, the pain that they've carried for decades, it finally starts to lose its power. It loses its grip.